The golden era of bodybuilding in many regards seems like a pure utopia. When watching footage from that period documenting the life of the bodybuilders of the era or listening to the reports from the now older guys, there is one connotation coming to mind: absolute cool. Perfect physiques, large weights, fast cars, bodybuilders were widely respected. Women dreamed of dates with bodybuilders, and the whole world of men dreamed of a muscle mass similar to that of guys from newspapers or movies. Nobody cared about doping, not to mention that nobody saw that as cheating back then. Bodybuilders would spend whole days at gyms, which at the same time were their workplaces. One particularly big establishment, filled with stars, was called Gold's Gym. The work atmosphere seemed to be the best. The recordings make it seem like every workout session was more like a social gathering, with everyone revolving around weightlifting. Nearly every face seen there seemed kind of shady, but when put together, they formed true foundations for doing many strength sports. To this day, we would like to look like them, exercise like them, or even behave in a similar way. And all of that despite the fact that compared to today's athletes, the guys of the golden era often look as if they were underweight. However, regardless of the weight class, the standard is a cut level that would be nearly unattainable to the athletes back then. What makes their physiques still so impressive to this day? And don't you think that if it wasn't for the skin problems of gynecomastia, nobody would prematurely depart from this world back then, and nearly all of them sported thick hair too? Not only that, but many of the bodybuilders from that time have a lot of children, including Arnold himself. Because on one hand, we are perfectly aware that steroids cause an array of undesirable side effects, and sadly, the dark side of taking them will even affect those who don't overdose them. Those who require a hormonal therapy often complain about them as well. On top of the adverse effects listed before, there's also the elevated blood pressure, increased hematocrit, higher chances of enlarged prostate, growth of unwanted hair. The less adequate protocol he gets from his doctor, the more side effects a patient will experience. And although I agree that for those who genuinely need this kind of therapy that benefits largely outweigh the damage, I only use this example to draw attention to the fact that doping is not like candy, and even relatively low doses don't necessarily have to be safe. Bodybuilders of the golden era took doses bigger than today's TRT protocol, even a generous one. Arnold most likely started taking steroids as early as the age of 15. On top of that, he was known in the community for his frequent use of metanabol, of which he took 3 to 4 pills a day.
I mean, anyone that was asked, he says, you take steroids? Yeah, I take 3 dianabol a day. Or someone else would say, I would take this, and that.
He would also sometimes take 1 injection a week of a compound mostly counterfeit today called primobolan.
And we heard that, certain Austrians were taking 4 dianabol a day and a shot a week.
Metanabol, known in America as dianabol, manufactured by the CIBA company at the time, came in form of pills, 2.5 to 5 milligrams each. The long ester of primobolan was sold by the Bayer company in ampules, 100 milligrams each. Frank Zane camouflaged a similar protocol in one of his poems. We also know that the bodybuilders of that time also used testosterone and drugs called Anavar and Winstrol. But Frank Zane also camouflaged a slightly different message on new actors whose appetite exceeded his imagination, and to many of them it proved to be lethal. Although we don't have access to exact detailed lists from those years anymore, and to a large degree we can only rely on speculations, we can be almost sure about one thing. Compared to today's bodybuilders or even beginning amateurs, the bodybuilders of the golden era took much lower doses. However, a bigger dose doesn't always mean a better one. This is where I digress a little, although this will help you better picture a certain mechanism. The benefits to side effects ratios when it comes to administering a lot of hormones or even typical enhancing agents have been researched multiple times. Testosterone is one of the best researched ones. In a study presented on the screen, the participants were divided into 5 groups. Over a period of 16 weeks, the first group was administered 25 milligrams of drug a week, the second 50 milligrams, the third 125 milligrams, the fourth 300 milligrams, and the fifth 600 milligrams. In most cases, the doses used to treat hypogonadism in men are 80 to 100 milligrams of the drug a week, which places most of them between the upper normal limit and a slight overdose. In the last week, their lean body mass growth was checked. At just 50 milligrams, some growth was already observed, although it may have been caused by something like better food quality. The third group, which was administered around a 25% higher dose than in many doctors' prescriptions, observed 7.5 extra pounds on average. 300 milligrams added 11.5 pounds, while 600 milligrams 17. We can see two relationships here. Firstly, even doubling the dose does not result in doubling the gains. The side effect profile, on the other hand, although measured subjectively, increases drastically. Those taking 600 milligrams a week, which is a little more than the dose widely recommended online for the first contact with doping, complained about the most side effects with the most life-impairing profile, which means that the bodybuilders of the golden era, maybe due to the accessibility or maybe because of the sentiment at the time, kept their protocols closer to the happy medium between mass growth and relative health. It is also worth adding that the kind of drugs that they had access to are considered to be of the lighter type in this community, the type that causes less side effects, but also showing poorer action compared to many of those widely accessible today and excessively abused. Obviously, that doesn't mean that they are safe to use. Absolutely not. Take the long ester of nandrolone, for example, which may inhibit male fertility for a very long time, and in some cases, it may not even return to the state from before taking it. Nevertheless, in terms of the easily noticeable side effects, it is a lighter measure than testosterone, for example. It's about its ratio of the anabolic to androgenic effects caused, and nearly every substance of this type is compared to testosterone. Nandrolone is relatively safe for hair, as it doesn't convert to dihydrotestosterone, and although it may cause gynecomastia or acne, in most cases it would take larger amounts of it than for testosterone, of course, at 1-to-1 ratio. Testosterone, although it was already used during the golden era, the king was metanabol, which was often used as the base. Of course, it is a highly hepatotoxic compound and not actually safer than testosterone, although it shows a slightly more favorable ratio of anabolic to androgenic effects. The remaining drugs popular at the time, although they show faster hair loss in literature, aren't the most dangerous in this regard, just like the rest. So far, among the factors that prevented the bodybuilders of the golden era from showing that many side effects, first there's the following. Taking lower doses than today, which, although they worked, were lighter on the body in terms of side effects. Then the second is, their protocols included drugs with a smaller side effect profile than many substances popular and widely accessible today. The method of administering them back then was also less brutal in terms of balding. The next factor could be the quality of drugs. The bodybuilders of the golden era bought their preparations at pharmacies. They would also get prescriptions for them from their doctors, which means they had access to laboratory-tested pure substances, manufactured from high-quality substrates. In today's reality, it is much more difficult to buy drugs at a pharmacy, and very limited in terms of accessibility of certain substances. Medicines that may work as doping are downright censored. This has caused the market to go underground, where today it mainly relies on products for which you can never be 100% sure how they were manufactured or even what they actually contain. On top of that, the drugs from pharmaceutical companies are notoriously counterfeited. Another difference is that today's bodybuilder in most cases is an amateur, one that doesn't necessarily take good care of checking his health and preventative care. The professionals from Gold's Gym were constantly supervised by doctors who regularly monitored the health of their patients. And in case of any complications, they were able to change or adjust their protocol so that it caused less harm. The reports from people taking doping then and now also indicate that the products from back then overall worked better and caused less side effects. The reason number 5 is diet. In the 60s, 70s, or 80s, plenty of preservatives widely used today weren't even in the prospects of big corporations. And on the statistical household level, people ate unprocessed products back then, often purchased directly from local farmers. There was also much less genetically modified strains. The meals of the bodybuilders of the time were well balanced, full of all the essential micro and macronutrients. Today, bodybuilders often eat whatever the latest trends are. When the world is scared of carbohydrates, everyone switches to keto. When they're scared of fats, then they eat nothing but carbs. And then there are those who constantly eat processed products and don't pay any attention to the quality of their food. Good quality food is the foundation of preventing the side effects of all drugs, including anabolics. And especially it should be kept in mind when turning to new substances or those widely known as very strong and destructive to the body. Last but not least, the quality of life. Sadly, today's society lives in a constant stress. The cool of the bodybuilders of the Golden Era, which I mentioned at the beginning, was certainly not without an impact on their health and well-being, and as a result, on the condition of their hair, skin, or the overall healthy look. Just the stress alone makes one visibly older, let alone combined with an unhealthy lifestyle and abuse of dangerous anabolic drugs. The bodybuilders of the Golden Era were downright contagious with their optimism and positive energy. With that kind of attitude, there's no way to look bad or unhealthy.